Okay, well, I guess I'm back, and I don't know why. Let's go, girl. Good girl. There's a bunch of stuff that I was thinking in my head. I'm like, I have no idea what to talk about. And, so yeah. And before I knew it, the things that I want to talk about, for some reason, I cannot form any words or thoughts for them. But I can give you what I did think of. And I started thinking about how I wanted some sort of meaningful change in the world. I watch a lot of autistic content. I love all of the autistic creators. I support all of them. I like and comment and help their algorithms. And not on this channel, but I guess I should. Usually it's on like Instagram or TikTok, right? And so I noticed that a lot of the comments and a lot of the content tends to be kind of just quirks of autistic people, and a lot of it is just representation, and representation is really good. However, I want more. I guess I'm just not satisfied like that. And so while thinking about what more I want from it, I was like, I think that my biggest qualm is that would require people to become, not just cognizant of issues, but actually want to do something about it. And I think that's the biggest problem. Like, I see content where they talk about workplace problems, where a person will have a problem with work. They will start off and they will be the best worker possible. Autistic people have really strong work ethics, and then they will see inequality, and there will be lack of communication, and not a single ounce of effort will be made to accommodate for people with different personality types or just different lifestyles or what. And I started thinking about like my own experience about being on boards and listening in on meetings, and how there was this strict mindset of either you work this hard, you work this way, or you don't make it. And I remember thinking and growing up and watching this kind of content, like, oh, how do we make noticeable changes? Like, people don't want change. People like to be comfortable. People like it the way it's always been. And then the first thing that intrusively comes into my mind is this, well, we live in a capitalist society, and if you want to make money, then you've got to do. Oh no, you're tangled, baby. Sit. Good girl. Let's get you untangled. Yeah, there you go. Okay. And so, in order for us to survive in this society, we have to conform to what they're saying. I have to. You can't sit in a meeting with headphones on. They can't change the lighting of a meeting. The dress code is always going to be this, business casual mindset. And if it's, with customers, it's always going to be this dressed up version. And all of this stuff serves no purpose. It has no purpose whatsoever. You decide if somebody is trustworthy based on the brand expense of the shoe and the wallet that they choose. And really, it's just rich congratulating the rich and telling themselves how rich they are, and they're going to do more rich business with more rich people because they can afford extravagant things. And when I was in those kind of businesses, they told me, hey, you need to make sure you have the latest cell phone. That's why the company provides you with the latest phone. And you need to keep your car new. You can't have an old car. It needs to be clean. You need to be buying new clothes, like the dress shirts and whatnot. And appearance is so important. My boss sent me a card saying that that song about a sharp-dressed man, about how the world just can't handle it. That's the thing, to succeed. Oh darn, those winds. Makes it impossible for this phone to pick up anything on those winds. And so we want noticeable change in capitalism, but that's just never going to happen. And so I'm left, kind of cursing myself, like, I see the change on there, and then I see the change that I want to see, and I see, basically that's never going to happen. People don't want to change, and the world is telling us, oh, we've gone so soft, like kids today, they just can't survive. They just don't have it what it takes. It's this, age of incompetence. And I'm like, I don't agree with that. If we're looking at everything from a capitalistic lens, we're basically saying that, we need to breed hard workers, and we can't have, oh darn, there's a truck up ahead. Whoo-wee. All right, we're gonna have to turn around, baby girl. You wanna turn around? Come on. I know, let's go around. Good girl. And so, from that perspective, that, the generation must be strong workers, is this kind of creepy, genetics, playing God kind of mentality. This, there's a term for that my brain just does not remember. If you remember, put in the comments, because my brain cannot recall what that darn word is. But yeah, so they're basically just playing this God mentality of like, oh, we must fulfill this role in capitalism. We must be all good workers. And if you're autistic, then you're not a good worker. My wife just read me a statistic saying that about 80% of autistic people are unemployed. And that really hurt me. Especially because I talked about in my last video about burnout and how there's no room in capitalism for having the burnout. And I look at other people who have had the same job for 10 plus years, who can, retire in the military or work at jobs that are even, longer than that, like parental figures who've had the same job for 20 plus years, or worked in the same fields, like that kind of stuff. It's just, it makes me feel embarrassed. I'm not a functioning member of society, and because I don't function properly in society, then I'm a pariah. Like I'm a burden financially on a family, because like if I'm living on my own, then I'm okay, that I'm a financially fit. But if I'm not, then I'm no good. Don't belong to anything. And you look at like the statistic. I remember a couple of years ago it said the average age was 27, and when I was younger the average age was around 20 for still living with your parents, and that number just keeps growing, especially in the States. I think it's over 27 now. I think it was like 30, like the average person is still living with their parents up to 30, and we're making this out to be a very big deal, a very bad problem. And once again, I think this is also an appeal to tradition. So I'm covering some complex topics, but I'll layer them nice and evenly. I'll go back. This is how this relates to autistic people in a society where you must be working, and how capitalism is kind of like the bane of an autistic person, because you have to be an efficient little robot and continue to, plug away promisingly nonstop, just keep doing your job. And while autistic people are really good at that, we also have, other needs than just the allistic group. And I think, well, what if we lived in a society where instead autistic people's needs were met and allistic people's were not? Would they still be considered the majority? How things would be flipped? Why is it that the allistic people, won this majority? And so if we made these changes to, how jobs worked, so that there could be more understanding, if jobs could be more accommodating. What'd you find? Did you find something, baby? You're just sniffing. Sniffing. Come on, let's go. Then, maybe things would change. And so I want meaningful change and representation to happen for autistic people, but I really doubt it's going to happen with the current setup with how capitalism works. So it's a little depressing in that regards. And people keep basically appealing to this tradition that, this is the way that things have always worked, and this is, the way we should continue doing them. But society and capitalism is a new emergence. I was thinking about how basically living with your family was the norm. I was a biblical scholar. I basically forced into seminary and read nonstop about historical documents. And one of the things I learned and picked up over time was that families didn't move out. It was actually less common. It was really common for, whenever you see depictions in history, you'll see aunts and uncles all living in the same manor, in the same castle, extended family, everything, right? It was actually quite normal to everybody to bundle up and share. I was learning about like bed situations, and those really got to me because I was trying to do some fantasy writing and, express like what kind of materials were made in the beds. And I did my research and I looked into it, and that's when I remember I was reading a funny book, Highlander. I don't know why I think that's funny. I think it's a very well done and historically sound book. The problem is that I think people just take the lewd and the romance a little too seriously, and they kind of ignore some of the greater, finer points of the historical accuracy. I've seen some people debate on there about, if her Tisane or Tisane, whatever the T is accurate, but mostly she gets a lot of those things right, and beds was one of them, where I was really kind of kerfuffled about, because in traditional, medieval times, beds were hard to come by, and everybody did everything together. Especially learning about biophysics, sleep. That's where we have like multiple cycles. We sleep for middle of the day, that's like the siesta, and then you wake up in the middle of the night and you have like your second watch. And having different watches was totally normal. And we as a society have totally forgotten about that. And we've convinced ourselves that we sleep for a solid, 8 hours. And studies keep showing that women need more sleep, and it's like, maybe those people who are doing the studies should go back to biophysics sleep and see if having these different episodes of sleep patterns, bi being two and episodic meaning, two different iterations of sleep, if that would change things. Like maybe women need more sleep in the regards to that they don't need to have all of their sleep in one go and then all of their working hours awake. And you can probably see where this point is headed to. It's headed back towards capitalism, because the beds were set up so that everybody slept in the same bed. And a lot of the child rearing and making was happening during, second watch. People would get up and get out of bed and go places and do things. And that's when, copulation would happen. And they would say that in some ancient texts that, pops up in my feeds that I get to read because I love, reading about history and stuff like that. Where they'll talk about how, the doctors would recommend that being the best time in which to engage in those activities. Did you find something? Did you find something? And so it makes me wonder about okay, so we keep saying you must leave the house at a certain age, and I think autistic people have a tendency to live with their parents much longer or more often, or return back to their family for support. I think this is a pretty wide accepted statistic, but I'd love to be fact checked on it, because some of this stuff is, some of it's meta, some of it's an analysis on my part, and I'm always interested to hear if someone has, that darn wind, someone has a different opinion, or they have other analyses to draw from. And so I look at this and I go, okay, so what if, I clearly think that capitalism is wrong on a moral, ethical standpoint, but I think I have more prongs to dig into it at this point, because I can point out that a lot of this is just an appeal to tradition. I don't think we need to do this work week. I don't think we need to have people getting all of this, most efficient work done in this 6 to 8 hour shift setting. And a lot of this was a pushback from us pushing to make laws. And I think about how as a society we're doing the bare minimum, like capitalism and laws. The laws are in place as the bare minimum, and we like to pretend that That's a lot of wind. We like to pretend that the laws are somehow in place are just, and laws are just basically what large conglomerates settled on through lobbying, which lobbying is a kind way of saying bribing, for their protective political interests. And so we look at these work weeks and we say like, oh, recently, oh, are you pooping? No? Okay, I thought she had her legs wide, and I thought she was ready to go. You have not pooped yet. Why have you not pooped? Anyways, and so these work weeks that I'm looking at, like the age of work, there's been a lot of appeals to that, and we've basically just stood by as a society and said, yeah, kids could work earlier, age-wise, and they can work longer, yeah, and they can work night shifts, yeah, and we just keep stripping back protections. And these laws were in place. We thought that they were like too much. I don't know anybody who thought that. And people who were like, yeah, more kids should be working, like, what? Since when? Why did we agree to this? Kids, I know this might be a hot take, kids should be in school. And I don't think that the purpose of school should be to get a job. Learning and figuring yourself out should be the purpose of school. That's the real hot take, right? Like, figuring out what it is that you want to do is such an awkward thing, because in society it's always like, when you meet somebody, they say, so what do you do? What do you do for a living? And it's like, I exist, thank you. I'm living under a hexscape of capitalism that's constantly telling me that if I don't wake up and make money, thank you, 21 Pilots, the premise is that, like, if you don't work, you're not good. We live in a very silly society where it's that or it. Like, there's no alternative option. You have a side hustle. You work for yourself, and like, it's not like that even like covers everything. I was working a high executive job in California, and I wasn't making enough to survive. Yeah, I know. Insert California's too expensive. Well, you look at the prices of rent in other states and countries, everything's kind of on the rise in the states. The economy is definitely tanking. That's another dissertation for some other time, but I just watched statistics showing that, New York is more expensive, Hawaii is more expensive, Texas is just as expensive, if not more, because it's been on the rise for so long that they're now considering Texas to be just as expensive as California. And so, yeah, just a matter of time before everything gets more expensive. So you're expected to work a side hustle in addition to your main job. I was ready to start door dashing. I was like, I need to get, my hobby needs to include making money, because I work a executive position, that's, most people would say this is a great amount of money, but it's like the median or the baseline for living in California. So it's like, yeah, the job pays more, but the living costs are atrocious. And people are constantly like saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's like, well, if you pick up that minimum wage job, by no means are you going to be making enough money to, make it big. You're not going to end up a Jeff Bezos. You're not going to, you're not going to end up an Elon Musk. Like, those people were born into money. And we look at all these appeals on a capitalism, and I'm pretty much going, okay, well, all this sounds just like a kingdom. It sounds like feudalism with more steps. I grew up with all of this as an autistic child, watching all this representation of dystopian futures and fantasy settings where there's always kings and queens, and a part of my brain was like not getting it. There's a lack of representation for functioning societies. Every society seems to not function in fantasy or sci-fi, and there's never any good solar punk or green methods for living or working or producing or anything. There's very, very little representation. If you have some representation, put in the comments, because I would love to watch some cinema that actually demonstrates like functioning societies, because that would be nice. And so growing up, I had none of this representation, so I started thinking that it was the norm for societies to not function very well, and that I would watch a movie like Equilibrium. I just talked about that recently with a friend about recommending it because of how it's kind of like a 1984 remake, or somewhere in between like that Fahrenheit 451, and we read or watch these films and books in school, and they're supposed to be complaints. They're supposed to be examples of what not to do, not examples of what to do. And it feels too often like that's literally what's happening, is that instead we're just like, oh yeah, it's totally normal to do these things. We look at The Great Gatsby, and this huge complicated talk about new money and old money, and how, even if you do make it, you'll never be as rich as old money. And generational wealth wasn't even a term. It wasn't even covered in any of the vocabulary or any of the tests. And that's the thing that The Great Gatsby was supposed to be teaching us. And the 1984 was supposed to be teaching us about this government control, but it's the people who are in charge are making these test planners. They don't really want us to critique capitalism. They don't want us to wake up, because imagine if a kid is sitting here reading these great early novels and going, oh, why am I in school being asked this question, responding to a bell that goes and tells me where to go, and all of this is just grooming me into being a factory worker, and it's keeping me downtrodden so that they can literally separate me and say, this person qualifies for more creative jobs, and this person, based on their grades, is going to end up working menial labor. And so we got to make sure that we reinforce the thought that this person wants to do menial labor because they did poorly in our tests. And instead of saying they did poorly on our tests, they just say you're dumb. They just treat you like you're nothing. And I watched a lot of my friends go through this because I had no problem taking the tests. I could study for anything and regurgitate and pass a test if I wanted to. And a lot of times I didn't want to, and I would just fail those things. And when I wanted to do well, I would. It was very unfair for me, because a lot of people would be like, you don't even try. And I'm like, yeah, I have to put my mind to it. But other than that, once I do, I do succeed. And it's really unfair for people who are like, I have to study nonstop. I have to, really work and engage with the material. And I saw this time and time again. It was very depressing for me, because other people would just see that's really not fair. And here I am, a perfect example of a gifted, burnout, autistic kid who I was great at anything I tried. And I would fundamentally, once I understood something, I could execute it. It was something as simple as I didn't understand how to play water polo, but once I had a coach who taught me how to shoot left-handed and understood my place, I actually would make goals, and I didn't even really like doing that. I wanted to be a goalie instead. And once I got on the goalie's side, they were like, oh, actually, you're really good at blocking and taking hits. This is perfect. We're gonna set you up to be goalie. I wanted that position, I fought for it, and got it. And it seems unfair because, I didn't have to be like the rest of the team players. I didn't have to be able to pass or shoot or any of those things. Didn't have to do all the swimming. It was a very entirely different training algorithm. And, the same thing goes for swimming. When I was a swimmer, they didn't really care about what I did. They were just happy I was on the team. And I was unhappy with that. And I was like, I need to learn a stroke that I like. And as soon as I saw the butterfly, I was like, I don't know how to do the butterfly. I need to learn how to do the butterfly stroke. And then I became the fastest butterfly stroke on our team for basically the whole school. Went and competed for the AA, I forget what that is. It AAA? The aquatics, I don't know, after school thing. I can't even remember what that was called anymore. Go to extra, swim meets for that. And yeah, do, swim butterfly on varsity. Oh yay. And so I look back and I go, okay, so other people are waking up to this mindset that like, hey, capitalism does not care about you at all. It needs workers. And these autistic people are, you know, they're gonna, if they have any kind of, you know, problems where they're gonna have a burnout, they're not going to be these good, perfect workers. They're not just going to be, you know, slaves, cogs, machines. And capitalism doesn't care. As soon as you have any kind of problems, they like to penalize you for that. You have attendance problems and you get fired. And we constantly look at it as like, oh, well, you know, you should be at work and you're hurting everybody else. And it's like, no, I disagree. You should have slotted enough people to cover shifts. You should have enough hires to do that. You should have enough employees to do that. There shouldn't be so little people. This is where I was talking about that bare minimum of capitalism. There shouldn't be such little people that are working that somehow you're only expecting the bare minimum to do that, and that's what you need to pull a profit. Like, no, your business model is working incorrectly. You should have a ton of coverage, and the workload should be a lot lower to keep your people happy. I know, hot topic, right? A hot take. And I would watch and be like, okay, it's really not fair because a lot of the times it's your autistic people who end up doing the mountain share of the work. They end up doing the lion's share all the time, and it's really obnoxious because it's like, okay, even if they weren't autistic, this is going to lead to a burnout because this is so unfair and unequal. And it's like, yeah, that's why we have, you know, like management positions are terribly designed. They're designed to basically, it's like a Dunning-Kruger effect. We're rewarding people who get to the top, and we act like they belong there. And a lot of the times it's the hard workers who will never get promoted, and it's the lazy ones that do. And I see this time and time again, and I've talked about being in management positions and how I made different decisions, and these things worked. So they worked for me, and I've tested them, and I would love to hear other managers who were able to test this and work this. But a lot of times people would look at me and be like, you're the hardest working person, I can't promote you, because then who will get the job done? You are pulling so hard. Do you want to poop there? Do you want to go there? What is it? What is it? And so like they'd be like, I can't promote you because you work too hard. I would have to put 3 people in your place to do it. Okay, cool. Why don't you do that? Did it ever occur to you that if I was in charge, that like the workloads would change and I would hold people accountable? You know, like if people want to sit around and gossip all day and not actually work, like that doesn't really fly under my team. You know, like we get the job done, and when we get the job done, then we can relax. And we try to make it way more fair and less like random or arbitrarily draconian, where it's like the managers show up and yell and then just disappear into the office and you never see the managers again. Like, what? And they think that like in the military, like to get things done, you had to yell at soldiers. And I was just like, absolutely not. That is not how we're going to do things around here. That is ridiculous. And so I keep getting angry from this. I got this autistic justice yearning to just make things make sense. And there hasn't been a whole lot of good examples of working capitalism in my life, and it's led me to believe that we're just so fundamentally broken as a society that we think that capitalism is the only thing that's ever existed. It's really not. It's just an emergence for the last, you know, really this level of capitalism for the last 200 years, and you know this the concept of capitalism for the last 1,000, and we're really not all that, you know, broad-faced capitalists. We're kind of like a, you know, a classist bourgeois, or we've got the oligarchy that basically, you know, we're a country ruled not by real democracy, but we're ruled by money, and as long as we don't have disclosure on money that politicians are taking, bribes, and you know we're just calling it lobbying, as long as we have a word like lobbying and we allow for, you know, foreign companies or foreign countries to send us money and send our politicians money, or especially allow politicians to trade on stock markets, which is just another made-up thing for rich people to get richer, then we're going to continue having this class warfare of elites versus the poor people, and this is going to screw over the autistic population even more. And so I'm encouraging autistic people to become more aware and more awake of, we want changes to the workplace environment so that they'll hire us, so that they will, so that we don't have to be quote unquote burdens to our family, because we're still living with family, and autistic people are living with their families just as much as autistic. You know, the age keeps going up, which means more and more people are living with their parents. If you live with your parents, I don't want you to think there's anything wrong with you. I want you to think it's completely normal. That's why I talked about how in older generations it was completely normal to live in your family for a long time, for forever. You didn't leave your family, and your parents stayed in the same house, and you didn't ship them off to, you know, a memory care home. They basically took, you know, all parts of life and capitalized it. Your family should be surrounded by you, unless, you know, unfortunately, unless they need medical care. But even so, you know, like, oh, are we pooping? No, just more pee? All right. 3 peas, no poos. We got a strike. I need to get you some more food or something, huh? I'm gonna push it out of you. Yeah, you want me to make you some more food? You love, I gave you plenty of treats. And so we want this change to happen. We got to do something, because it's not working right now. And I'm really losing my faith in the States, the American system. I think it's a bit too late for the States. They're clearly going towards an economic collapse. I'm just an autistic person, probably get into a conversation about CPTSD versus autism, because there's a huge overlap, but I've got pattern recognition, and I can see all the prices are going up and the things are changing, and more people are getting laid off. I just heard neighbors get laid off, people that I play the games with, especially like my paid games. If you are interested in playing a tabletop game, yeah, I run those things. I definitely will be streaming more of that content. But I really love talking about my psychology and my autistic stuff, so I don't know if I need a different channel for it, or if I'm just going to stay where I am. Who knows? We'll see. It seems a little bit of a cacophony because we're all over the place. You're sniffing. It looks like you're going to go poops. No? Will you poop? No, she won't poop. And so, oh, you're pulling hard. Is it a squirrel? And so, yeah. I think about like how the Magna Carta was one of the things that I read about growing up, and it was in my young adolescence. It really changed how I viewed things, that like people actually believed in making change. And so this is kind of a Magna Carta call out. Like, we need to make changes if we want autistic people to survive. We're getting all this recognition, and then nothing's happening, no change is happening. And I don't want this to be some a political thing where it's like, oh, it's just these, you know, I hear a lot of slurs that revolve around people wanting equal rights for people. Yeah, if you catch yourself, if you find yourself thinking, you know, oh man, I gotta own a particular, you know, political party, gotta own them, and be like, you know what's toxic? You. If I don't want this kind of movement or this kind of call to change to be something that is, you know, criticized down to, oh, we have different colored hair, or, you know, it's turned into some gender war or what. I think autistic people hit everywhere on the neurotypical spectrum, and they hit everywhere on both the political and any particular demographic, any criterion that you look at, because anybody can be autistic. This isn't some, you know, particular demographic problem. And I'm thinking that, you know what, it is a problem. I'm thinking that the representation for autistic people, for neurotypical people, is just not being repped. And I'd rather this be more focused on making a change to capitalism, because if we don't hold capitalism accountable, if we don't hold them, you know, to any sort of standard, then it will walk all over you. And we have so many exhibits of this. And I think that autistic people will probably be the best people to appeal to this, because we're probably really tired of not being represented in this regards, of work weeks, hours that they're allowed to make you work, or breaks they're not allowed to give you, or, you know, just, especially for the kids, which is really irksome that kids are being expected to work sooner and sooner. It really irks me. And homelessness, I know, like, my wife is very upset about homelessness, and it's very upsetting to see this and be able to do nothing about it. Like, why are homes cost money, when there's other countries that literally can give you homes for free. It's not even a problem, and they solve a homeless crisis. And it's like, why is all of these problems just okay in our society? And I keep pointing back to this, how this capitalism is just letting people die. They're just totally okay with, if you don't work the way we want you to, then you don't survive. And capitalism is a bad type of genetics, where it's literally just breeding workers and cogs and machines. And I'm a bit repeating myself, but I'm a bit kind of recapping everything I said, because I want to finish my thought about how I wanted to see some sort of representation of a government that actually works. We're so afraid of communism, we turn that into a slur. And a perfect example of a communist country that was doing really well was like Cuba, but that's too intimidating. So let's starve them out of petrol. Let's do a blockade, which should be an act of war, and have approval from Congress, and the people of the state should know that that's what America's doing. And instead, this that'll get censored, and nobody will ever really know what's happening to Cuba. And unless you were a military police and anything, give a damn about Cuba, then it probably would never be a blip on your radar, right? Everybody wants to talk about Gitmo, and nobody wants to think about what that represents and what that means. And I think maybe in the future, if I'm allowed to discuss it, I will. That, or the states will tell me what is censorable and what is not. Who knows? I probably doomed my channel to oblivion by mentioning basic things that people should be aware of and want to change. And I think any kind of criticism on capitalism is never going to do well. So I'm hoping that people who are autistic will pay attention to this and want this to be something that works for them, because capitalism is not working for us. That would be the enemy, and we're the only ones who really kind of have each other's backs. I would hope, since autistic people, we come from such a wide range of diverse cultures and everything. It would be nice if everybody agreed on things, and coming from such a division and such a diversity, because that's what makes us amazing and different and more powerful, instead of us all being the darn same. And so yeah, I think here's a perfect example of why we have the TISM. Sense of justice is huge, and wanting equality for people is, I think, a normal trait in autism. And if I had any other autistic traits that were visible in this, let me know down in the comments, because if I can't get anybody to rise up and want to make changes, then at least I could say is that I want a community where people respect and understand and unify each other. And I think this broadband for this neurotypical autism spectrum is a great place to start. And I want more autistic friends. I've got plenty, and sit, good girl. And I think that we could do for some more. I kept saying that I'll go over the types of autism that I can think of, but my channel is really not all that new. It doesn't get a whole lot of engagement, and I get less and less views. And hopefully I can find a better method that is more easy on the eyes, that people can either tolerate my voice or like what I talk about or listen to me ramble, or just as simple as pointing the camera at little Nellie here, my little poodle, and maybe somebody enjoys a nice dog walk to listen to, relax while you're sleeping, or instead you like hearing me talk and geek out about things that I know about, history. It's part of my, specific hyper focus. But yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. Like, subscribe, I've got tons of other content if you like a diverse profile of things. I am a Jackie of all trades and a master of none. But thanks for watching, and y'all take care, stay safe out there, and maybe I'll see you in the next one. Ciao! Arrivederci.